Welcome back. If you haven't seen the earlier parts, I really recommend going back and watching those. This story hits different when you feel every step of it. For those who have been here, I'm glad you're still with me. Let's keep going, right from where we left off. This isn't just a timeline, it's the truth I lived through. Raw, unfiltered, not just what happened, but what it looked like. Because sometimes surviving doesn't look like strength. Sometimes it looks like barely holding on. And this is what it looked like for me.
Towards the end, I barely left the house. I was cleaning, taking care of the dogs, doing everything. All my money, the tiny bit I got as a death benefit from my dad, went to keeping our little RV life running. Food, gas, cigarettes, all of it. I poured everything I had into taking care of her. And the worst part is, I thought that's what love was supposed to look like. Until one day we got into a fight. One where I did lie, and I take full accountability for that. Maybe part of me was trying to sabotage things because I didn't know how to leave. Maybe it was my subconscious screaming for help. It wasn't a huge lie, just didn't tell her I was hanging out with a friend that she didn't like because she didn't like most of my friends, and I needed out of the house. But she found out. She made me sleep on the couch for 2 days. Screamed at me, broke me. I had panic attacks nonstop for 48 hours, and then she told me to leave. So I did. I called my sister, got packed up. This was December 2020, right before I turned 18. But that wasn't the end. Living with my sister again didn't last more than a couple weeks. The toxicity came back fast. So I ended up in my car again, freezing nights, curled up in the back seat with a blanket and a pillow, telling myself I was almost there. Because I had a plan, and I was holding on. And on the day I turned 18, I signed the lease to my first apartment, with someone I thought I knew. I used to think that knowing someone meant you were safe with them, that if someone laughed with you, shared meals with you, watched movies on your tiny TV after work, that they couldn't possibly hurt you. That's what I thought when I let him into my space, my room, my trust. But it turns out there's a huge difference between someone knowing you and someone thinking they do. That night, when I woke up to hands in my body that shouldn't have been there, I couldn't even process it, just silence, numb. I didn't scream, I didn't fight, I just stopped letting him in. No more movie nights, no more pretending things were okay. I started locking my door, but even that wasn't enough. I'd still wake up to him trying to get in. Jiggle of the knob, pressure against the frame, me frozen under the covers. But I stayed. I tried to convince myself I was strong enough to handle it. Until the night of the party. It started normal, friends of friends, music, laughter in the living room. That's when I met him, the one who'd later become my baby's father. But that night, that was also the night everything imploded. My roommate snapped. He got drunk, belligerent, started waving around a shotgun, first threatening himself, then others, screaming down the street over and over again like he was begging someone, anyone, to stop him or hear him. But no one came, just us, in that house, terrified, stuck. By morning, he was back, still raging, still blaming me, screaming that I was the problem, that I had ruined everything, telling me to get out of his apartment, even though I was the one who'd paid most of the bills, me, the one who filled the fridge, cooked dinner, cleaned, kept the lights on. And in the middle of that chaos, the guy I met the night before, he offered me a room, said his parents might let me stay if things got too unsafe. It wasn't even a decision at that point. I was running for my life, just like always. So I went. I talked to his mom and she let me stay. And a week later, he told me he had feelings for me. Now here's the part that should have been a red flag. He was in a relationship. Still, I was vulnerable. I was craving safety, affection, peace. And I told him nothing would happen until he ended things with her. And he told me he did. So we went on a picnic under the stars, eating pizza, laughing about nothing and everything. And when he kissed me, I let myself believe in the fairy tale. I let myself believe maybe this was what I'd been waiting for. Healing, hope. But then I posted a picture, and a friend screenshotted it sent it to the girl he was still dating. And that was the beginning of everything. He explained it away. I believed him because I needed to. I hadn't had time to breathe, to process, to heal from any of it. I'd just gone from one storm to the next with no umbrella, just trying to survive. The manipulation was subtle at first. The love bombing, the sweet words, the support. He made me feel wanted, and that was something I didn't know I was starving for until he fed it to me. But soon, it became cycles of blame, gaslighting, fights, cheating, emotional torture. And every time something went wrong, it was my fault. I was too much, not enough, too emotional, too cold, too chaotic, too quiet. I'd try to avoid conflict, but he'd push and push and push until I broke. And the moment I snapped, suddenly I was the abuser. I was the crazy one. And when he cheated, that was my fault too. Because I wasn't giving him what he needed. I wasn't doing something right. But he could never tell me what that was. And after everything I'd been through, every betrayal, every scream, every person who looked me in the eye and said I love you while breaking me, I started to believe it. Believe that maybe I deserved it. Were there times I said things I shouldn't have? Times I reacted too intensely? Absolutely. But I will never again carry the weight of someone else's cruelty, because nothing justifies the way I was treated. Nothing. And while all of that was happening emotionally, my entire foundation was crumbling financially. When I left that first apartment, I tried to explain the situation to the landlord, told her about the abuse, the danger, the violence, but all she saw was a broken lease. And when I couldn't afford the $1,000 she demanded to remove my name, it stayed on my record. To this day, anytime I apply for a new place, she tells them I walked out on a lease. No context, just another black mark against my name. Another lie I can't seem to outrun. And then, there was the car. I was 18, he was 17, we needed transportation. I had no credit, but I signed for it anyway. We agreed we'd split the cost, but just like everything else, I kept my end, and he didn't. He told me I didn't need to work, had me quit my job, he'd take care of us. I'd always end up getting a job shortly after because we couldn't afford it, or the money we did have was going towards things other than what they needed to. But then he drove it recklessly, burned out the engine, took it out drunk one night and crashed it into a pole. Brought back the street sign like a trophy. Later, he spun out in the snow and slammed into a fence. The car barely ran after that. We fell behind on payments. I was drowning, trying to keep us afloat while he sat back and watched. Eventually, it got repossessed. The first hit to my credit, the first major scar in my adult life. At just 18 years old, I had a broken lease, a repossessed car, a failing relationship, and a heart that didn't know what safety felt like. I wasn't just starting from nothing, I was starting from less than nothing. But I was still breathing, and as long as I could still breathe, I wasn't done yet. Eventually, everything just became chaos. Not a little bit messy, no. This was the kind of chaos that seeps into your bones, the kind that keeps you awake even when you're too exhausted to move. Our relationship became this endless loop of him realizing he could leave and come back, and I'd still be there, every time. No matter how broken I felt, no matter how many pieces he left me in, I stayed. Because I believed that love was staying. I believed that love meant proving yourself over and over, even when someone was actively showing you that they didn't love you. The first time we broke up, we had just moved into our own apartment. Another place, another lease, another fresh start. Except my name was the only one on it, because he was still a month and a half away from turning 18. We moved in with a group of friends, 6 of us total. I didn't want to do it, I knew it was a bad idea, but he convinced me. He always had a way of making his ideas sound like the best thing for us. Said it would be cheaper, easier, but it wasn't. I ended up being the only one paying the bills, the only one cleaning, the only one cooking, for 6 people, a full house, but I still felt like I was the only one there. And yet, I thought it was okay, because I wasn't alone. There were bodies around me, there was him, and he acted like he loved me, and I thought that was enough. I thought that's what love was, giving until you're empty, taking care of everyone, putting yourself dead last, burying your own needs because maybe, just maybe, if you give enough, they'll stay. They'll love you back. They'll choose you. Even if I was suffering, at least I wasn't suffering by myself. On my dad's birthday in 2021, he broke up with me. I'll never forget the way he'd been off for days, cold, detached. I asked him over and over if he was okay, if we were okay, and he kept saying we'd talk later. That night, he didn't want to talk. Instead, he cuddled me, laughed with me, watched movies like nothing was wrong, like everything was fine, and I held on to that moment like it was oxygen. Just one more normal night. By morning, everything changed again. He was distant, quiet, off. I dropped him off with his mom for work and texted him asking what was going on. He told me we needed to take a break. Just like that. No conversation, no closure, no care. He left me with all of the roommates who still weren't paying bills, still weren't helping, still weren't cleaning. I was still alone in that apartment, my name on the lease, all the pressure on my shoulders. Only now, my heart was in pieces too. And once again, it was my fault. I was too much. The house was too chaotic. I was too chaotic. We fought too much. And somehow, it was always my fault. And I believed it. I genuinely believed I broke it. So I thought maybe I could fix it. That led us into this vicious cycle, this back and forth of manipulation that blurred every line. We weren't together, but we kept talking. And one minute he'd say we have a chance, give me hope, and the next he'd disappear, ignore me for days, and I'd just sit there, waiting, holding on to every crumb like it was a feast, hoping that if I just changed enough, waited long enough, was good enough, he'd come back for real. And I didn't see it for what it was, not then. I didn't realize how deep I was sinking, not for a couple more years, to be completely honest. Then came December of 2021. He invited me to a party at the place he was staying. We weren't together. Just a random night, but that night, that's the night my daughter was conceived. Not when I found out, just when she came into existence, quietly, without either of us knowing what was about to happen. That same night, we made the decision that I'd have to let go of the apartment. Another lease on my record, another door closing. I moved into the same house he was staying at. Still not back together. He still hadn't decided that we were a couple again. But we were sleeping next to each other, acting like we were together, doing everything couples do. And then, I found out he was cheating. Not just emotionally, physically. He was leaving while I was asleep, going out to be with other girls, and coming back before I woke up, laying next to me, holding me like nothing happened. And I had no idea. For months. And technically, I guess it wasn't cheating because we weren't together, but I didn't know that's how he was living, and it hurt. It gutted me. Then on January 4th, 2022, I got the positive pregnancy test. I was living in that house with his friends, people who had become my friends too, but still, they were his first. When he found out, he panicked. We weren't together, and this wasn't the life he wanted for his child. I get it, I can try to understand, but understanding doesn't mean it didn't hurt, because he left for 3.5 months, and I didn't know if he was going to come back. He was back and forth. One minute he wanted to be involved, the next he didn't. I had no idea if I'd be raising this baby alone. But let me be clear, I wanted her. I was excited. This pregnancy was everything I dreamed of. I already loved her more than life, and I knew deep in my bones that if I had to do it alone, I could. I would. She'd still have the most beautiful life. But it didn't make the unknown any easier. It broke me, not knowing if she'd have both parents. I came from a broken family. I didn't want that for her. But I also didn't want to force him to be a dad. I wanted him to choose her, because love that's chosen feels different. And I didn't want her growing up thinking she was unwanted, the way I did. So I held on, wishing he'd show up, but refusing to beg, trying to be enough for both of us. And that tug of war in my heart, it wrecked me. And then, the people we were staying with got arrested, went to jail. So now, I was completely alone, pregnant, living in a house that wasn't mine, taking care of their dog, paying their bills, still barely working because my morning sickness was so bad that just being near fast food made me want to throw up. No one else would hire me and I had nothing. I was at absolute rock bottom. Eventually, he came back. We moved into another apartment with some of his friends. We never made it onto the lease, thankfully, but that place was just as toxic. Their relationship was broken, ours was too. The whole house was one big storm cloud. But we got back together in that house, and so did the cheating, and the lying, and the gaslighting, and the fights. But I stayed, because I was pregnant, because I wanted a family, because I didn't want to raise a child in a broken home. I thought maybe if I just gave it a little more, held on a little tighter, fought a little harder, I could make it work. Eventually, things blew up between us and the roommates, a huge fight, and guess who got kicked out? Me. Not him, just me. So I went to his mom. Now me and her, we had serious issues. Screaming matches, fights. But we had a mutual understanding now. I was carrying her first grandchild. Like it or not, we were connected. So I asked if I could stay with her. And at the exact same time as I was asking for help, he was cheating on me again, physically, with another girl, while I was in California, while my brother was on life support. He'd been in a motorcycle accident, hit by someone who ran a red light. The impact caused a brain aneurysm to burst, and he was being kept alive by machines. I flew out there to make the final decisions, to say goodbye, to hold his hand one last time. And while I was doing that, the father of my unborn child was with someone else. By the end of that day, he told me he was also moving in with his mom. So when I got back from California, pregnant, grieving, shattered, I had to pack up all of our things and move it to his mom's house by myself. He wasn't even there, he was working out of town. We both lived with his mom for the next few months, through the end of my pregnancy and into our daughter's first months of life. And yes, things looked better. There wasn't as much cheating, the fights weren't as loud, but the manipulation never stopped. The blame, the guilt tripping, the distortion of truth. It was all still there, just quieter now, sharper, more disguised. And after 4 months of being a mom, of watching this little girl grow and learn how to love, I realized I couldn't let her think that this was love. That screaming and silence and pain and begging was love. That a man being faithful only when it's convenient is love. That staying through misery is love. I knew what that did to a person. I had lived it, and I couldn't let her live it too. So I left. Not because I thought I deserved better, but because she did. Because even if I never get love again, even if I'm alone forever, she deserves to see a version of love that doesn't hurt. And if that means being alone, then so be it. Because I would rather raise her alone than raise her thinking that this is what she should settle for. And after I left, that's when my ex-girlfriend and I started talking again. She was married now, had a child of her own, but she and her husband let me move in. They gave me a place to land, and for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel completely alone. That only lasted for a couple months, and during those couple of months, I was in this constant tug-of-war with myself. One side of me clung to the reasons why I left. The other side doubted everything. Wondered if I was just being impulsive, if I had made it all worse in my head, if maybe I was the emotional one, if maybe things weren't as bad as I thought they were. Because that's what he made me believe. Every time we tried to talk about it, it blew up in flames. Screaming matches, accusations, hurt, rage, regret, words that hit harder than punches. And yeah, I'll take responsibility for how I reacted. I could have handled some of those moments better. I didn't always communicate clearly. Sometimes I said things out of hurt that didn't come out right. But I was trying. I was desperately trying to understand something that didn't make sense. And every time I'd get close to clarity, he'd twist it, gaslight it, deny any of it happened, tell me I was wrong, tell me I was too much. And because I never learned how to stand up for myself without questioning my sanity, I believed him, just like I had believed everyone else before him. I started spiraling in my own guilt, telling myself maybe I did mess up something good. Maybe he really did try. Maybe the moments he took care of me, smiled at me, called me beautiful, maybe those were proof of love. And maybe I was just broken and overreacting and couldn't see it clearly. But no, that wasn't love. That was manipulation. I know that now. But in the moment, I was too wrapped up in trying to earn something that was never mine to begin with. So when he said we could maybe try to work things out, I clung to that tiny maybe. I worked every angle to try to fix things, bent over backwards, said all the right things, gave every piece of myself away. Again. And 2 months into him saying that, he got with someone else. His now girlfriend, the mother of his second child. And yeah, fine, life moves on. But what he did to us at the start of their relationship permanently destroyed any chance of peace between me and her. Because from the jump, he was playing both sides, manipulating both of us, lying to both of us. To me, he said he was trying to leave her, that he wanted to be with me, that she was threatening to end her life if he left. To her, he said I was crazy, that I wouldn't leave him alone, that I was obsessed, that he told me no 1,000 times and I just wouldn't stop. And I believed him, again, even though I'd heard those same lies before, even though he'd said those exact same things about me to other people. So yeah, I lashed out. I reacted in ways I wish I hadn't. I aimed a lot of my pain at her, because I didn't want to believe he was doing it to me again. I didn't want to face the truth. I wanted someone to blame. And when I finally did wake up, I tried to fix it. I owned up to what I did wrong. I took accountability for how I treated her. But she won't meet me halfway. She refuses to acknowledge that she was manipulated too. And because of that, she expects me to carry the weight of everything. Hers, his, mine. So now I don't hate her. I pity her. Because I know what it's like to be in love with someone who's slowly destroying you while convincing you they're saving you. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's backtrack. Like I said, I was staying with my ex-girlfriend and her husband when that all started. About 2 months in, something happened at the house. Not because of me, it had nothing to do with me, but because it was a work-provided home, the landlord said they couldn't have roommates anymore. I had to go, and I had nowhere to go. I asked my sister, and she said no, because of the guy she was dating at the time. So I turned to a friend who was in a rough spot. Underage, mom about to go to jail, 3 little siblings she had no idea how to take care of. I offered to stay there and take custody so they wouldn't get separated, but I wasn't 21, so legally I couldn't. They found someone else. And that's how I ended up in an apartment with a mutual friend. We were supposed to split everything 50-50. Both our names were on the lease. We agreed to pay back the debt left by my previous friend's family so we could just transfer the lease and not get kicked out. But that agreement, that partnership, it didn't last. Unfortunately, as much as he did try in his own half-hearted ways, he still allowed them to come into the house and completely disrespect it. And even worse, he didn't pay his portion of the bills. So when rent came up, I'd pay my half, sometimes early, always on time. And the landlord would come to me, asking again where the other half was. I'd lie, I'd cover for him, say we were waiting on a payday, say we were figuring it out. Then I'd scrape together whatever I could, pull from whatever was left, just to fill in the gap. Sometimes he'd throw me a little piece of what he owed, and I'd cover the rest. I was constantly cleaning up after his messes, financially, emotionally, physically. But that was never part of the plan. I didn't sign up to carry the weight for 2. And on top of that, he kept letting them, his people, his old chaos, come in like it was still their place. And I'll give it to them, sure, it was their house before me. But when I was the one paying the bills, not just current bills, but back pay, not just rent, but power, gas, water, when I was the one putting in the work, cleaning, fixing, holding it all together, when my name was on that lease, it became my house. So when I came home one night, exhausted, sore, still in the same clothes from a 24-hour deep clean, just to find the entire house destroyed, I hit a new kind of breaking point. There was dog shit on my bed, trash thrown across the living room, dishes stacked up like nobody had lifted a finger in days, toilet paper ripped to pieces and thrown through the house like confetti, bedding torn from every mattress, just wreckage everywhere. It felt violent, it felt personal, it felt like my home was screaming at me to run. So when the landlord came by a few days later, once again asking why rent was late, why the cops had been called over the roommates' dogs, why nothing had changed, I didn't lie for him this time. I told the truth. Because this was it. This was the line. The landlord had been more than lenient. He gave us chances. I gave us chances. But now I was looking at the very real possibility of losing everything I had worked for. Because I kept covering for someone who refused to carry his share of the weight. So I told the truth. And the landlord gave him 72 hours to leave. No eviction, no record. Just go. And he did. But that decision set off another ripple. The friend group blew up, people turned on me, drama unfolded like always. Stuff that would still come back around years later, even if it isn't worth diving into right now. But once again, I was painted as the villain, and for a while, I believed it. I believed I was cold, heartless, for choosing myself. But deep down, I knew the truth. I knew that if I hadn't spoken up, I would have lost everything. Not just for me, but for my daughter. And we didn't deserve that. We were doing our part. We were surviving. And if I had to be the bad guy to protect our peace, then so be it. But even then, I didn't get to stay. Because he didn't step up. He didn't finally get a place of his own. He didn't consider what was best for our daughter. Instead, he moved with his mom, who was leaving town and relocating 2.5 hours away. He was already living with her since our breakup, and instead of creating stability, instead of getting a place nearby so we didn't have to rip our daughter back and forth through long drives and confusion and inconsistency, he chose to leave, to follow her. So there I was, again, faced with an impossible choice. Stay where I had just started to rebuild, or uproot my entire life. Drop the lease I'd finally secured and move away from everything I had left, just to try and make life easier for our daughter. And a part of me was still hopeful. Still manipulated enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, if I followed him, if I made the sacrifice, if I showed up one more time, we could fix things. We could make it work. Because that's what he kept saying, that there was still a chance, that he wanted it to. So I let go of my apartment, of my town, of every small, fragile piece of support I still had. The friends I'd held on to, whatever version of Whitney was maybe coming back into my life. Even the sliver of family connection I still had left. I gave it all up. I dropped everything and moved. 2.5 hours away, near him and his mother, because I was still trying to hold this broken dream together. For our daughter, for some sense of family, for the hope that maybe things would finally settle. And by some miracle, I got a place. The new landlord listened to me. I told the truth again. I proved my income. And I got approved quickly. We moved in. We started over. Again. But that was also when things with his girlfriend spiraled. The final fracture, the point of no return. Unless one day we somehow sit down and talk, which if I'm honest, I don't see happening. As much as I still wish we could. But that move, that sacrifice, was not the light at the end of the tunnel. It wasn't the moment things finally got better. It wasn't peace. It wasn't relief. It was just the start of another brutal chapter. Because for the past 2 years, it's been like this. Relentless. One blow after another, one crisis after the next. No breaks, no peace. Just the constant suffocating weight of trying to survive when it feels like the world is hell-bent on breaking you.
Take a minute, breathe, get a drink of water, maybe a snack. But if this part hit, stay with me, because the story's not over yet. I promise it does end up eventually ending on a much happier note. So go to the next part. And if you haven't already, subscribe, comment something, leave a like, share. Help me get my story out there. Thank you guys.